Hello and welcome to the Gameweek 7 edition of the FPL Scope podcast. I am one of your hosts, Mathias. With me today, as always, it is Kevin. And before I ask you about FPL and any of that stuff, I want to go back to the weekend and what a weekend for you in general with all your teams winning. So how are you feeling post the celebrations? Did you get hoarse or something from yelling out from the games? Because I know you can get pretty loud when your teams are winning. How was the weekend for you in terms of the results for all your favorite teams?
Yeah, it was pretty great. Yeah, I was a bit hoarse. Hilariously, so all three teams won in the weekend, and then now midweek, two teams drew and one team won, and that one team that won was actually Everton, which is the current jersey that I'm wearing.
Yeah, two wins on the trot as well. One in the League Cup against your fierce rivals, Aston Villa,
Yep.
a team that you hate for some reason. Yeah, nice results for you there. And you drew, what was it, Burnley at home in the League Cup. West Ham, my
Yep.
team, got Arsenal at home in the League Cup. Not the best draw, but hey, got to beat the best teams to win the whole thing, I guess. So yeah,
Yep.
better to meet them early, to be honest, because it's easier. They're probably gonna put out a weaker side in round 4 than they would in the semi-final. So
Yep.
maybe that's the chance to beat them. Usually West Ham play against Man United away in the League Cup. It's basically a meme at this point. Like, they always face Man United away, but this time it's Arsenal, and that's going to be interesting as well. But that's of no use for us in terms of FPL, at least in sense of getting points from it. But there are a lot of things you can learn from the matches in the League Cup, and that's what we have actually done right now. We just finished watching all the League Cup matches, including the Newcastle match. And now, post-match, we're getting some pretty interesting news from Eddie Howe himself, the manager for Newcastle, and that is a couple of things with his team. Isak had to be subbed off injured in the game, and Wilson wasn't even on the bench because he's apparently struggling with some hamstring issues. And then Sven Botman, one of the most popular players currently in FPL, I brought him in last game week as well and got a nice 12-pointer for me. He is struggling with some knee issues as well. He has been injured not too long ago, so he is sort of struggling. So we gotta keep note of that as well and see how that happens or what happens with him. And then we also have the man that is your favorite player currently, and that is Dan Burn. He was feeling unwell, so he wasn't on the bench either, but he should probably be fine for the weekend. If he's sick now, he should probably recover in time for the weekend. So yeah, Burn might end up being the best pick out of them all in defense. I mean, Trippier is like the man defensively, but then again, Tino Livramento looked absolutely fantastic again today for Man City, or against Man City. So I imagine he could play some matches rather than Trippier in the league if they are going for, especially when they play PSG now in the Champions League. Maybe they want to play Livramento in the league and Trippier in the League Cup, or League Cup, Champions League. But either way, let's move on to FPL and your score. We just talked about Burn, 12 points for you. He was one of your transfers. You had two transfers available, and you used the second one which I kind of was against when you did it. Udogie out for Burn. I did not like the Udogie out part of it. I wanted you to sell Chilwell, but in the end, it sort of benefited you because you would have started, I guess, Gusto rather than Chilwell if you did. No, you would have Udogie on the bench. Yeah, you would have Udogie on the bench and Gusto starting rather than Chilwell. So you would have -2 from that. So you did actually earn points, not just the points from Burn, which you got extra as well. But either way, you also did with Sato Alvarez, which was basically a wash. I think both of them got 1 point each. Maybe Wissa got 2. I can't remember. But yeah, how did your game week go, and what do you feel about your transfers and Alvarez and Burn going forward as well?
I mean, generally speaking, if you look at my team, there are a lot of double-digit players there, which I'm more than happy with, especially Bernino, as I've affectionately started calling him. Um, yeah, I mean, if I didn't have him, it would have been a even worse of a game week because apparently 69 points isn't actually a good score
Yeah.
in the long run because so many people got super lucky that they doubled up on Newcastle players or had Son and Madison or Son or Madison, and I'm stuck here with fucking Sterling and Chilwell, who've been terrible and the worst combination of. Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm the reason why this double up hasn't worked because they have not looked good ever since I brought them in. Sterling has always impressed in every game, and I think he is like I'm always gonna say this about him. He's one game away from like a hat trick because
Yeah.
eventually some of these chances will get converted. But Chill was a piece of shit. And now that he apparently is injured too, good riddance. I can't wait to sell his ass.
Yeah, it seems like Chilwell, he had to be like he not even subbed off because they didn't have any subs left. He had to just leave the pitch, and Chelsea were down to 10 men to defend their 1-0 lead against Brighton. So that's not a good sign for Chilwell and his availability for the weekend. So definitely a candidate to be sold in general. But I want to touch more on Sterling because he is not injured. He came on in the game, and it looks like he might play. It depends what they're going to do now because Nick Jackson is not available for the league game because he has 5 yellow cards for dissent basically already this season. So Sterling might even play up front-ish, maybe. I don't know. I don't know how they're going to solve that. They have Broja as well, or Armando Broja, or whatever you say. But he's not fully fit either to play because he just came back from injury. But how patient are you with Sterling? He obviously has 2 pretty easy fixtures now against Fulham and Burnley. Are you going to give him both those games? One of those games?
Nope.
Are you going to sell him straight away? Like, what's your patience with him?
Like, considering Trippier is the only available like defender in Newcastle, besides Livramento, of course, there's parts of me that might bring Trippier in and then potentially getting Anthony Gordon, and that would be enough for me to then take out Chilwell and Sterling, I think, if my maths is correct.
Yeah.
Which would then also give me some money left over for next week to get rid of Gusto as well. So for me, that's sort of where my head's at. But Fulham away, London Derby, Chelsea tend to have a good record there. This is going to be a good, a gimme sort of win for Chelsea against Brighton, who have been fantastic all season. I can't believe we're at that point where we're like, oh, Brighton's the team to beat. Just only a couple of years ago, we used to always make fun of them. So, so I think a part of me is patient enough, but I can't with Chilwell anymore. He's not even starting games. Fuck off.
Yeah, Chilwell is pretty much going to be gone for most teams in general. Chelsea also have terrible fixtures. After those 2 easy fixtures against Fulham and Burnley, they have like the worst fixtures in the league. So Chelsea players are definitely not in vogue, as they say. So yeah, you're kind of unlucky there that the game week you wildcarded was when Chelsea were like at their hottest, when they looked the best after impressing against Liverpool, looking decent against West Ham, they lost, and then destroying Luton. But yeah, you have 3 Chelsea players. Gusto is not really like that big of an issue because he's so cheap. Either way, you should be happy that you didn't get the red card while he was playing for you, at least. But yeah, Chilwell is definitely someone you can sell. And Sterling, personally, I have him as well in my own team, and I think I'm going to give him 2 weeks, but I might sell him next game week before the Burnley game. But at least this game week, or you could even play up front if he starts when Nick Jackson is out. I'm going to keep him now and see how he does. If he looks promising again, or especially if he scores a couple goals, I'm definitely going to keep him for the next week. But he's sort of on his last legs. And the same goes for another guy that is in your team as well. And that's Bryan Mbeumo. I've sort of been like kind of not that impressed with him lately. And you saw him against Everton, your team. Didn't really do much. He played as a wing back for some parts of the game as well. How's your patience levels with Mbeumo? Is he someone you're looking to sell, or is he someone you would easily keep?
He's fairly low too, to be completely honest. The only thing that's saving him right now is the fact that he, at any given time, can get a penalty, and he's their absolute number 1 penalty taker, and always looks good when he takes a pen. But he's too pen dependent at this point, so that's not okay. Just generally speaking, Brentford have been on a decline. I think Flecken.
Yeah.
Is it a language barrier? I have no idea, because Flecken was an awesome goalkeeper in the Bundesliga. Didn't even play for one of the more amazing teams. He played for Freiburg and was just kicking ass, man. Like, he was just getting clean sheets left and right. And here, he can't, like, yes, he got 2 points in a 3-1 loss. But god damn it. Like, I'm getting tired of them. Whistle was already on the last straw for me, but Mbeumo kept. I had to give the faith, considering the fact that he'd scored a lot, but now he's misfiring too. Flecken's pissing me off as well. So, but I do have Areola.
You do have Areola. That's something that's good that's going for you, because West Ham are going to get from game week 10 until 18. I think they have like pretty much easy fixtures pretty much every single game week. So So yeah, Flecken is not that big of an issue for you because you can mostly just play Areola. And I think Areola and Flecken also kind of rotate pretty well as well. Like those game weeks where Areola has like a sort of more difficult game, Flecken has a pretty easy game. So yeah, I think your goalkeepers are actually fine. Flecken, I'm getting annoyed with him as well as another player that I have too. But yeah, he's still a decent player and a player that a lot of managers want to bring in as well, which is kind of interesting to me because he has not looked good at all. I know people slate Pickford for being a bad FPL pick, but Flecken hasn't really been that much better at all. So yeah. By the way, that is your team, 69 points, pretty nice score. But this game week, it's not good enough, I guess, but it's decent enough. It's a holdover score where it doesn't really matter. It didn't really make that big of a difference up or down pretty much, but I still think you have a pretty good team. But yeah, like I said, getting rid of the Chelsea and Brentford guys seems like the right idea currently, because those guys were more popular around the time when you brought them in for the Gameweek 4 wildcard. Now they're sort of more slowly but surely someone you can sell, but this coming game week they have some decent fixtures, so yeah, there's no rush with most of them, but guys like Chilwell, get out basically. Speaking of Chilwell, get out. I think that's Chemo's plan as well with Chilwell. He was pretty close to selling Chilwell this past game week. He actually has the money to do Chilwell to Trippier, I think, and he was pretty close to doing that, or at least Chilwell to any Newcastle defender. Any Newcastle defender would have been good, whether it's Botman or Burn or even Fabian Schär, who only got a clean sheet. Poor guy. But yeah, Chemo in general had a really good game week as well, especially before the Newcastle game. He told me that today. I met him today, and yeah, he said he was like super happy. And then when the Newcastle game happened, he was just sort of just like, oh, I can't be honest with this anymore. But yeah, he had a pretty decent game week, 75 points. Attacking wise as well, he was really good. He has Son and Madison, meet him as well. Really good in general for Chemo. He does have a really weak bench though. That's the reason why I've sort of like talked about doing a wildcard. He has talked a bit about doing a wildcard. I mentioned that as a possibility last week for him, and that's something he's considering now as well. But at the same time, he has like a decent, at least the starting lineup is pretty good for the next game week. So yeah, I don't think the wildcard is that necessary right now, but it is nice to have it in store at least, I guess. But looking at Chemo's team, are there any like pressure points apart from Chilwell, who we've already talked about? Any other players that stick out to you that he might look to sell at some point?
I mean, I really like this team. It's just a question of how patient he's going to be with Matoma, because Brighton's matches aren't the best, and teams like Aston Villa and Newcastle have some easier fixtures going forward. So it's just a question of whether he's willing to swap them out. Estepinian, he's a funny guy because he could just play 10 minutes and still get an assist. So, you know, it's tough to get rid of him. But Matoma is one of those who can explode at any minute. So it's just a question of whether he wants a little bit more stability, considering the fact that fixtures will be getting tougher. Other than that, I think the team's good. Chilwell, obviously, get the fuck out. But the rest of the team, the fact that he has Son, I'm very jealous of, because I think Son can explode against these. Like we did a podcast and you mentioned, you know, Son can score on the counter against any team, and that includes the big teams. And I think that's always going to be the case. But he doesn't have to worry because he has Son and Madison.
Mm-hmm.
The only blaring omission, of course, is the fact that this motherfucker is Egyptian and doesn't have Mo Salah, which is heresy. It's crazy. It's Landsförräderi, which means like country traitor in Swedish. I can't believe it. And I'm an Evertonian. I hate Salah. I hate Liverpool. But
you don't hate Salah.
My God. I can't even lie about
Football
it.
hates.
La. I can't hate. I'm a football purist, and Salah is sick, except when he whines. Just for being touched. But that gets him penalties like he did against West Ham. So
shut up. But either way, yeah, Chemo not having Salah, especially seeing as he is Egyptian, and Salah is the greatest Egyptian of all time. I'm going to say it right here, right now. He's the greatest Egyptian of all time, especially in my books. I've actually I think I don't know if I mentioned it last podcast, but I kind of wanted like an Egyptian football kit with Salah on the back because I'm a pretty huge fan of his. I would never have a Liverpool kit personally, but Egypt, sure, that's cool. But yeah, the
Fair
one
enough.
player that I'm kind of interested in getting your take on when it comes to Chemo's team is another midfielder, actually, because I think Mitoma, sure, he has some tough fixtures now, but from Game Week 10 onwards, he has really good fixtures. So I don't know if you should sell him now and then have to bring him in later, because he is a really good player to have in general. He showed you that right now at 14 points. He can get points even if he hits bench from the start and gets in as a second half substitute as well. But Marcus Rashford is also another player that I'm kind of interested to hear your take on, because he sort of, I had pretty high hopes for him for the Burnley game, but he looked pretty off it in general. Like, he didn't really look that good. The game before, he looked pretty promising, even though they lost against Brighton. But this game against Burnley, I was just really like put off by him, and I don't really know what to make of Man United at all either. They do have Crystal Palace at home next game week, and they did actually just beat Crystal Palace in the cup 3-0. So maybe that's a good game for him, I guess. But yeah, what do you think of Rashford in general? They have really easy matches, which is also another difficult thing with Man United midfielders. But you can even add Bruno to this as well. Bruno and Rashford, what would you do if you had him in your own team? If you had both, if you had Bruno or if you had Rashford, what would you do in all those three scenarios, basically?
I mean, it's a real conundrum for me as well because I do have Bruno, and I did the mature FPL thing of being like, whoa, well, the fixtures dictate this, and he's the talisman, he's that, blah, 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 blah. And
Yeah.
I brought in Bruno, and the first two games I had Bruno were two of the most frustrating games I've ever seen in my life in terms of an FPL asset because he was basically a ball playing center back, and I hated my entire life. And then came the Burnley game where he gets the ball of Johnny Evans' entire career. Like he'll never like me and a mutual friend of ours, Remy, was talking about how he'll never play a pass like that ever again in his entire life in training in like he would never ever play a pass like that with his weaker foot, by the way. And yeah, I lucked out and Bruno scored. So it's really tough to know because I think more than any other player, Manchester United assets are going to be very much dictated on the teams they play. So I think in a counter-attacking sort of game, Rashford's the one to go to. If they're the one owning possession, Bruno's the one who they're going to go to. It seems to be the most prevalent case of this because that's sort of how it's gone. Against Arsenal, when they had to counterattack, Rashford's the one who scored.
Mm.
Against Burnley, when they had all the possession and dictated most of the play, Bruno's the one who scored. So it's frustrating. I think I'm equally frustrated on both players. The only thing that I'm giving Bruno more sort of
Leeway.
leeway, a little bit of more patience is the fact that he's cheaper and he's the penalty taker.
Yeah.
And he's going to take all the fucking bets. He's not going to give them away. Like any other player would give some away to get their strikers going. Not Bruno, man. He has a main character syndrome from the get go. So
He took a penalty with Ronaldo on the pitch. So
yeah, exactly. And blazed it against World Cup
Villa.
winner Debo Martinez. But that's the only thing I'd say. The funny thing is, I would have been like, oh, sell Rashford for Son or Madison, but he's got both. So
Yeah.
I think a fun thing for him to maybe consider is maybe looking at maybe a Moussa Diaby or potentially some of the other fun midfielders that exist that have easier matches going forward.
Yeah. I think it's interesting with Rashford and those guys as well. I don't really know what I would do in a situation. If I had both, I think it would be pretty easy to sell one of them.
Yeah.
Potentially, probably Rashford at this point if I had both. But if I had one, stick it out for a couple more games, I guess, with the easy fixtures and just see what happens. And then if you're on a wildcard, especially for Game Week 9 or Game Week 10, then yeah, you can ship them out and just have better players, really. Go with Salah, who's going to be essential in the near future. And then you have Diaby, who's going to have really good fixtures. You have a lot of good midfielders you can choose from, basically. But yeah. The midfield and attack for Chemo was really good this week, but his defense left a bit to be desired. But for the manager of the week, it was kind of different because the manager of the week, which the name is actually, I don't know. That's actually the name. I don't know in Arabic. He has, I assume it's a he, maybe it's a she. They have the same attack as Chemo, actually. in terms of the midfielders and the attack. But defensive-wise, they have Walker with 11 points, Botman with 12 points, and Onana with 7 points compared to Kimo, who had Pickford with 2, Chilwell with 0, and Saliba with 1. And that's the difference between 75 points and 102 points. It's just as simple as that, really. But yeah, this is kind of a different team, I think. Especially Walker is he's getting some steam now. Apparently, he's 5.3. Like, he's gone from 5.0 to 5.3 all of a sudden. Like, how has he gotten 3 price rises already? It doesn't seem like a player.
He's playing all the time. That's the thing.
He is, but he's not talked about at all. But he's getting price rises left and right. But yeah, this is pretty much a similar team to Kimo's, except just a better defense, I guess. And even Medicash on the bench as well. Like, this is a pretty stacked team, and this person hasn't even used any chips either yet. So yeah. 404 points as well in total, which is more than I have as well. I think it's like almost top 10k this person is, or at least top 50k or top 100k at least. Yeah, looking really good. So yeah, any comments about this team in general? Like, any potential weak spots you can see in this team, or is it just all systems go? This is a nice team.
That's all systems go. It's a very nice team. Obviously, Rashford, Onana could be success or disaster, considering the fact that Man United are so dysfunctional. So the only thing is, maybe if you want to switch Rashford to one of the midfielders, like I suggested for Chemo. But other than that, I really like this team. I'm quite jealous of it, and I think it's looking really good going forward. Of course, keep an eye out on Sakanis in case the injury is more serious than it is. But other than that, great team. I think this is there's a reason why he has 400. Goddamn,
404 points
out of that. And he got
102. So a fourth of the points basically he got this game week by itself.
But yeah, fair enough, man. I think Walker is such a fun outside pick. Only beaten by me with Dan Burn, who got 1 point more. But I'm kidding. I think Walker is a great pick. Again, one that we spoke about very early in the season, but again, we didn't really mention after that. And yeah, fair enough, man. He's been looking great, and him snubbing Bayern has proven to Pep that, yep, you're the right back for me, because he's playing all the time as well. Like, he's not even remotely close to being benched and stuff like that, or rested.
Yeah, and he even mentioned himself, Kyle Walker said that he is playing like a more offensive role this time around, and he's going to get more assists like he did now against Nottingham Forest.
Beautiful assist.
Really nice assist. Really nice goal in general, the Foden goal. I was happy with that as a Foden owner myself. But yeah, Walker is a fun pick, but I might be a bit controversial with my transfer suggestions, but we'll get to that later. But yeah, it's the only thing with this team that is sort of lacking in the future is Mohamed Salah, like we said with Chemo as well.
Of course.
So with a wildcard remaining as well, is this potentially a team that could wildcard in Game Week 9, 10, or do you think they should try to get Salah in a different way, or what do you think the Salah plan should be, or should you just try to go without Salah? Maybe you should brave those fixtures without Salah, or do you think Salah is going to be essential when the fixtures turn for Liverpool? Like, what's your idea for people that don't have Salah? And this actually is some more news from the League Cup actually, which might make like the saving the wildcard for as long as possible viable. The fact that both Brentford and Man City are knocked out of the cup means that most likely there's going to be a double game week for Man City in Game Week 20, and that's 2 game weeks after they blank in Game Week 18. So it's going to be difficult to switch from having basically 1 or 2 City players to like loading up on City and Brentford players for that double game week. So do you think there's an option to save the wildcard for as late as Game Week 19 for a team like this, or do you think they should just go and get Salah in Game Week 9 or Game Week 10 when most people will get Salah?
Salah's that guy, man. Like, we've had him since Game Week 1, so it'll never be an issue for us, but eventually it will be an issue for everyone else, because I don't think Salah's done crazy numbers, but he's done such solid numbers that even someone like myself, who's sort of tailed off a little bit in terms of the points and etc., but it's always Salah as the reason why I'm still in it in that regard. So for me, I think Salah is such a good stopgap to just getting secure points, as Kane was last year. Kane sometimes just got 6 points, still led to 30 goals at the end of the day. So, and again, not talked about enough was Harry Kane's season last year, because he'd be player of the year if it wasn't for Holland
Yeah.
and, top goal scorer and everything like that. So for that reason, yeah, I'm really enjoying Salah's consistency. And we already know that this isn't even his actual ceiling. This is just him slowly and surely getting into it. And it's only going to explode. We've seen it happen. It's going to happen again. Is Spurs the game that it happens? Maybe not, but there's so many easy fixtures coming up and all this type of stuff that just favor Salah so much. And the fact that they're resting him in the League Cup and etc. just proves our point that Salah was a good pick.
Yeah. So would you lean towards a wildcard to get Salah, or would you do something like Rashford down to Gordon to get a lot of money to do Son to Salah eventually in week 10 or something like that? Like, what would
Maybe
you
something
do?
like that. Yeah, because like the fact is, you know, Rashford out seems like such an easy thing to do, and that gives you most of the money to try and get Salah. It's just then a question of where do you downgrade, and yeah, it might be Son, might be Madison. Like these guys,
Saka
like
injured?
Madison looked like he got super injured and then all of a sudden just kept playing and all this type of stuff, which
Mm.
could potentially lead to a long-term injury. I hope not, knock on wood and everything like that. But yeah, I think there are easier avenues for him, especially if Walker gets edged out or something like that. Because I think that's the main reason why a lot of people didn't touch Walker, is because they didn't know whether he'd start every game or not. But his commitment to City after the Bayern snub seems to have been the reason. Personally, I think so, especially with Cancelo killing it at Barcelona as well.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think it's just one of those things you'll have to consider. An easy avenue to that is also, like you said, eventually doing a wild card. But I'd say you can brave it out. You braved it out without Salah this far. It's been going very well for you, considering you got 102 points. So you know what you're doing, but same time, eventually you're going to get pissed off when Salah gets 20 points.
Yeah, a Salah hole is always around the corner. But yeah, you did also mention well done for having Walker from the start of the season. And I'm kind of jealous because last season I had Walker from the start of the season, but you mentioned him. Cancelo was the one to have. So I'm kind of bitter about that still. Walker was a decent pick to start the start of last season as well, but he's been even better this season. So yeah, I'm kind of jealous about that as well. But yeah, in general, really nice team and a really good future. Whether they wildcard in Gameweek 9 or 10, or if they save it and try to get Salah, I would try to get Salah regardless if I was wildcarding or not. But yeah, with Rashford and potentially Saka as well, especially if Saka has injury against Bournemouth, it seems a bit easier to get to Salah than it would be normally. So yeah, potential there. But also the defense is also at least four really good defenders. Bollock is not the best in terms of FPL, but Cash, Walker, Botman, and Stepinian are all really good picks that could play pretty much every game week as well. So even if you downgrade potentially a striker, or if you downgrade a midfielder to like a bench spot, and you have basically you can play a 4-3-3 as well, and gets or not 4-3-3. What am I saying? But yeah, you can play four. What is it? Whatever. You can play with one less midfielder, have like a bench midfielder for the cheapest price, and have Salah in your team as well, potentially. So yeah, a lot of things you can do when you're in this position with 102 points this game week, 404 points in total, and all your chips remaining as well. Pretty nice position to be in whether you have Salah or not, really. But yes, let's move on to some predictions and results from our predictions. These are our predictions from last game week, all the matches. We have pretty similar predictions. There's just two kind of big differences, and one of them is the fact that I had more correct results than you. I had the Chelsea Aston Villa correct results in terms of being an Aston Villa win. I had 2-1 for Aston Villa rather than the 1-0 that I actually ended up with. But you had one more correct scoreline than me once again, so you're actually 4 scorelines correct compared to my only 1 scoreline correct so far, which is crazy, to be honest, considering how many matches there have been so far that we've tried to predict. But you did get the Liverpool against West Ham fixture correct, 3-1 for Liverpool, sadly for me. But yeah, that's pretty much the game week in the broader terms. But looking at these fixtures and your predictions, what are you happy with? What are you sort of like? What should you have seen coming? What were interesting results for you in general this past game week?
I should have shown some more faith in Aston Villa because I I knew Chelsea were going to lose. It's just I have Chelsea players. Come on, guys, just sort your fucking lives out. So it was just pure waffle when I was just like, oh, they have to react. Fuck off. They're just terrible. No, but like the Chelsea loss was something I should have seen coming. The Arsenal Spurs game ending a draw wasn't impossible either. I was very close to it actually getting the 3-2. And I felt that 3-2 would have been actually it just as justified score as a draw was. It's just that Arsenal just gave up for like a half hour of the game where they were able to counter twice and scored. Should have shown fate to Everton. No, I'm just kidding. I did not expect us to win it in the fashion that we did. But we're back to back wins against Premier League opposition. Not in the Premier League though. That we're gonna have to wait until this weekend, hopefully. But yeah, expected more from Crystal Palace. Expected more from Wolves as well, especially with Pedro Neto in the form that he is. Yeah, other than that, I'm pretty happy with this. I mean, 5 out of 10 is good, and one correct scoreline is even better because we're terrible at that.
Yeah, we're pretty far off. I know the game Super 6 where you're supposed to get 6 correct scorelines in the same week. Like, I have 1 through 6 game weeks, so just, pretty embarrassing. But I could have had one more. You did mention Spurs, Arsenal. You were close to getting the 3-2, but if it wasn't for stupid Jorginho, then 2-1 could have easily been the result for Arsenal as well.
Yep.
That would have been so much better for me in FPL, in terms of the score results or prediction thing, because I don't have Son or Madison in my team either. So yeah, I'm pretty annoyed with Jorginho, the once upon a time 3rd best player in the world, apparently, according to the Ballon d'Or rankings. I don't understand. Like, he got 3rd because Chelsea, or he won the Euros with Italy and won the Champions League with Chelsea. Alvarez now has won the World Cup with Argentina and the treble with Man City, including a Champions League. Is he going to be the number 1? Is he going to win the whole thing? No, he's going to be behind. He's not even going to be 3rd. He's not even going to be like, he's among the 30. He's among the 30, but he's not going to be in the top 10 even. No. Even though he made a huge contribution to Argentina, especially the World Cup win, and also was really a solid contributor to Man City as well. But yeah, that's my Jorginho rant. I'll never understand how he was 3rd in Ballon d'Or. I said that at the time as well. He's 3rd in the Chelsea midfield. He's 3rd in the Italy midfield, and somehow he's 3rd in the world because he happens to play for both teams. But
my friend, he didn't even win midfielder of the year when he won that whole thing. Kante got it. Yeah. Anyways, it's a shout.
Kante legend, by the way. He's
of course.
If we talk more about regular football, he'd be singing his praises because I'm a huge Kante fan, but. That's not what we're supposed to talk about here. We're supposed to talk about Premier League results and FPL mostly, but we're going to take a look at the fixtures for next game week. A bunch of fixtures on the Saturday. There's one early game, 6 games at the same time, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 at the same time at the 3 p.m. kickoff for all you guys, but 4 p.m. for us here in Scandinavia. And then the final fixture on the Saturday is Spurs against Liverpool. And then we have 1 match on Sunday, 1 match on Monday, and 1 match on Tuesday because we have a double game week with Luton and Burnley. But yeah, just quickly running through all the fixtures. The first one is actually pretty interesting because we have differed a bit when it comes to our predictions. It is Aston Villa against Brighton, and I have a 3-1 win for Brighton. I think that's just going to be my template Brighton pick. It seems like they win 3-1 every single game. So yeah, I'm going to go with them again with 3-1. Aston Villa have looked really good this season, but more so against weaker sides, against the better sides. They have sort of struggled a bit, so that's why I sort of feel like I'm going with Brighton instead. So I go with 3-1 for Brighton here, even though it's an away game. But you have 2-2. You think it's going to be high scoring, and 2-2, it seems like a really nice FPL fixture, and I think it's a really good opening of the weekend, the early game on Saturday, for this to be the game. 2 teams that are not the biggest, but are 2 really fun teams with really fun FPL picks as well. But what do you think about this game? And if you had to choose one way or the other, would you go with Brighton or Aston Villa in this game?
It's really tough because I would have said Brighton because of their track record and stuff, and I thought Aston Villa have looked worse. But that being said, Aston Villa benched a bunch of players and stuff in the match against us, Everton in the cup, and went out. But that being said, I think it's going to be a hard fought game. I feel like Brighton, generally speaking, haven't been the best away from home. If well, except the Old Trafford result, of course. But and I think Aston Villa have been sort of building up a little bit. Good win against Chelsea as well. So yeah, I think I see them not losing the game, but it being a draw because Brighton, I think, are good enough to secure at least a point. But I think it's really it's a real cop out to say I think it could end a win for both teams, and it also can end a draw. But I genuinely think like this to me, out of all the games, was the hardest one for me to predict because it could go either way. And I think it's just going to be a fun game.
Yeah. You say they have been poor away, but that's not this season because they did win at Old Trafford, and the only other away game they've had so far this season is Wolverhampton away, where they won 4-1 as well. They sort of struggled to be fair in that game to start the game. Wolves could have easily been in the lead in that game, but they did end up winning 4-1 away as well. They won every single Premier League game so far except for the one game at home at the Amex against West Ham where they lost 3-1 because West Ham are massive. But either way, I think it's also a really fun match. And yeah, I could easily see it being 2-2 as well. But like I said, I'm just going to predict 3-1 for Brighton in every single game because that seems to be their favorite result so far. They beat Bournemouth 3-1, Man United 3-1, Newcastle 3-1. They lost 3-1 against West Ham. And then they won 4-1 over both Luton and Wolves. So it seems like scoring 3 or 4 goals and conceding 1 is basically the Brighton template. So that's what I'm going for here. But next game is Bournemouth against Arsenal, and we both gone with an Arsenal win. Of course, I've gone with a pretty tight game, actually, because I feel like Arsenal, I don't know, there's just something off, and especially with all the injury issues potentially for Arsenal as well currently. And Bournemouth sort of still trying to find their way with Iraola as their manager. He has also been pretty good in these fixtures historically and against the bigger teams in La Liga. So I'm predicting just a small like 2-1 win for Arsenal. But you've gone for 3-1 Arsenal. Do you think it's going to be pretty easy for Arsenal, or do you think it could be tight as well? Would you lean more towards 4-1 or 2-1?
I have no idea why I said 3-1, to be honest, especially considering that Saka might be out. So I have no idea why I predicted that, but fuck it, let's go. Saka in, it's 3-1. Saka out, it's 2-1. If you get what I mean. Like, I think generally it favors more 2-1 result considering the injuries and stuff. But screw it. I think Arsenal are in a good vibe, generally speaking. A bit disheartened over not getting the win against Spurs, and obviously to keep them up with City, they have to basically win all the time to just keep the momentum going. But generally speaking, I think vibes are really good at Arsenal right now, especially with their win in the Cup today, their Champions League win, because I've spoken to so many Arsenal fans, like, finally we're back in the biggest stage and we looked really good and all this type of stuff. Yes, it's PSV Eindhoven, but these are the sort of games you have to win to really start getting into the swing of things. Win the easy games because you're going to need that sort of momentum and confidence to try and beat the big teams too. So take the wins where you can. Champions, that's what they do. They grind them out. And if you want to be champions, you got to win this game against Bournemouth. These were the sort of games that cost them last year when they randomly drew Southampton or they randomly drew this team and failed to win it, or all this type of stuff. So, yeah. And
was Bournemouth the 3-2 game where Reece Nelson scored the final winner? Was that Bournemouth or was that someone else? I can't remember.
I can't remember. I feel like it might have been.
Yeah, I think it was at Emirates. So, but
yeah.
Next game, Arsenal. We think they're both going to win, but we both think that Everton are going to win, and that's pretty rare so far this season. But Luton at home, surely this is a must-win. Like, you have to win this game. I know you had 2 wins in a row now, but this has to be a 3rd win in a row because Luton at home seems like the easiest fixture of the whole bunch this season.
we have we have failed to take a point at Goodison Park. That is crazy to me. We're one of the teams that are notoriously known for being one of the most difficult matches to play away from home. And we are letting people win 1-0 every single game, pretty much. And I think I said Dyche out for that game. Dyche for the Brentford game is 100% Dyche out if he can't win against Luton. They have been the whipping boys of the Prem. This is the game you win.
Yeah.
This has to be the game you win.
And we both have a 2-goal win for Everton. I have 2-0 for Everton. I think they're going to keep the clean sheet. I think now finally Pickford owners are going to be happy.
Tarkowski, legend.
Tarkowski is going to get a clean sheet again. He looked really good last game week. You have 3-1 for Everton. No, I can see that happening as well. And that's what they did against Brentford. Typical Everton to concede like a stupid goal, but it seems like you're starting to score goals now, especially with Calvert-Lewin coming back as well. And Beto still looking good. He had a pretty good chance as well against Brentford that barely went outside the post rather than inside the post. Yeah. So yeah, I think a two-goal win for Everton, or even more, I think, is on the cards for this game.
Considering the fact that we're one of the teams that have created the most chances in the Prem, says everything about sort of how unlucky we've been, and makes sense to why things are now accumulating in terms of wins and stuff. So, so for me, I could see it going either way, but in the sense of I could see it being a tight win, or like we ran away with it.
Yeah.
But a win is all I see, because this is the game we have to win. Like I'm sorry, but like, and I'm not trying to shit on Luton or anything like that. It's just they've been the worst, so we got to beat them. As simple as that.
Yeah. Then Man United against Crystal Palace, we sort of got a preview in the League Cup, although those teams are very different from what we're going to see in the league, and that's why I think it's going to be a bit tighter of a game. I think Crystal Palace will be more up for it. I think Crystal Palace have less depth than Man United, which shows in the League Cup. So I think this game is going to be closer than the League Cup game, but I still think Man United will eke out a win and get that elusive 3 points, so those elusive 3 points in the league that they've been looking after for the past few game weeks. I'm going with 2-1 for Man United, you're going with 3-1. We both expect Man United to win. Can you see Palace getting a point or getting potentially 3, or do you think it's pretty much Man United's game to win?
Personally, I think this is Man United's sort of game to win, in the sense that they've already gotten the win. There's going to be some psychological element to that. Not to say that that doesn't mean that it's not going to be a completely different 11 and all this type of stuff, but it is Old Trafford. They're trying to fix a dysfunctional sort of season, a dysfunctional relationship between manager and player, in the sense of Ten Hag and the whole Sancho debacle and all this type of stuff. There's so much things going on in that club. Anthony's having to deal with some allegations, and whether he's innocent or not, we'll have to wait and see. All this type of shit. So there's so much going on, and I think the best way to get back onto the swing of things is just to keep accumulating wins and go from there. I've really liked what I've seen of Højlund. I obviously was one of the two to write the reviews on him, and I have high hopes for him. I think I really hope Ten Hag understands that Højlund needs minutes. He can't get the same treatment he got at Atalanta, where he got to play garbage minutes and then got criticized when he didn't score, but then showed flashes of brilliance and then sort of like keeps flip-flopping. It's annoying because obviously Anthony Martial can all of a sudden just score against any club. So I get that issue, but let's be honest, Højlund's the future of the club. He's the one who's going to lead the front line, everything like that. The minute you guys get a decent offer for Martial, you're going to sell him and try and get someone more stable with their injuries and stuff like that. So for me, I think, I'm not saying that Martial is a complete waste of time in terms of starts and stuff like that, but I think the focal point has to go through Rasmus Højlund, and they look much better when Højlund's playing. So for that reason, if Højlund starts, I think it's going to go better for Bruno and for Martial and for Rashford. I think those
Yeah.
two need another sort of quality player to get the defenses, following them, because the thing with Martial was back in the day he had pace, and now that the injuries have sort of hampered that
Yeah.
pace. Højlund is so creative. That's one thing that I've always said. I think he's even better than Haaland at, which is chance creation. That's not to shit on Haaland, because Haaland is very understated with his chance creation. But
Definitely.
I think Højlund has better vision. Like, he has an eye for a good pass and stuff like that, which will just benefit ball playing midfielder and Bruno Fernandes, who likes spraying the ball and getting it back. Obviously, he does this all the time because he wants the ball back. He's such a ball hog. But with someone like Højlund, who is very unselfish, he'll get that ball back every time. Plus, with Martial, he'll try to dribble 3 players and get sandwiched between. So, yes. I think I've gone into a whole tangent about Man United rather than focusing on the other games. But yeah, I think it's going to be a Man United win.
Yeah, this is going to be a long podcast, but that's fine. We're here for some nice long form content. But yeah, just one final note on Man United since we're on the subject. I think also Amrabat, he looked also really good now in the League Cup, and he's going to be a massive plus for them. Like, I'm a pretty big fan of his. Like, a lot of people have like talked him down a bit now. Like, he got a lot of hype around the World Cup, obviously, but then after that, it seems like people have sort of like gone the other way again and sort of want to be a contrarian when it comes to Amrabat. But every time I've seen him play, he looks really impressive. So I think he's going to be a massive upgrade over Scott McTominay, especially in that midfield. And I think Hannibal Meshbury has looked really good so far this season as well. So I think Man United have a decent thing going, even without a right winger currently, with both Sancho and Anthony being out for different reasons. But yeah, that's enough about Man United. Let's move on to Newcastle against Burnley. We both have a Newcastle win, obviously. Easy game for them. I have a 2-0 win. I expect them to keep a clean sheet once again. But I don't expect them to run over Burnley, but maybe that is being a bit strange, because Newcastle have shown that they are completely ruthless when it comes to just destroying opposition that they are playing well against. We saw that in the opening game against Aston Villa, and we saw it now against Sheffield United with the 8-0 win, which was crazy to see. But yeah, I've still gone with just a regular old 2-0 here. Yeah, it's going to be interesting with how all the injuries, potential injuries at least, could affect this game as well. But yeah, 4-1 you have. You don't expect Newcastle to keep a clean sheet, which is interesting, even though Burnley don't even have Lyle Foster, I think, still. So who could you see scoring for Burnley?
No idea. But it is also due to the fact that I think just Burnley have what it takes to randomly score against most teams.
Yeah,
I'd say this at home, it's 100% definitely a case that they can do it. Away from home, maybe I'm being a bit over some their abilities, and because I think this could easily end like 7-0 as well, sort of thing. Like, but now, because we did these predictions before the
injury news.
League Cup matches were finished, and also before the injury news. So now with the injury news, yeah, I could actually see them maybe scoring, because all their defenders are injured. Potentially Isak and Wilson are out, and considering the Champions League is just around the corner as well, I wouldn't see that they'd risk either striker if they can. So there's a lot going against Newcastle in that regards. But come on, man. I love Vincent Kompany, but Burnley suck.
Yeah, fair enough. I also think there's actually something in it that Burnley, especially with their style of play, they can score against anyone because they can pressure the opposition to make mistakes and get the ball and score. They have some really nice players as well. Seki Amdouni has been really good for Basel the last few years. Luka Kolyosho as well. I know you don't like to speak well about Espanyol players or former Espanyol players, but he looks electric, especially in like open play. His end product maybe not the best so far, but he's still really young as well. He looks really good as well. So they have enough quality in the team. Of course, they have Sander Berge as well, or Sander Berge, as they say in England. Is one of my favorite players because he played for my team in Norway. So they have a lot of good players, but yeah, I just think Newcastle are just too good of a team to concede really against Burnley. But But yeah, I can see both of these things happening, really. I can see the 2-0. I can see them keeping a clean sheet, or I can see them scoring a lot of goals. What I can't see is Newcastle not winning this game, though. And I think we're both sort of in agreement when it comes to that. And we're sort of in agreement when it comes to that in the West Ham Sheffield United game as well. I have just a small, 1-0 win for West Ham. This is actually the first time this season I've backed West Ham at all. But yeah, I think this is going to be a pretty tight game in terms of Sheffield United wanting to prove a point defensively and try to just make sure that they don't concede close to 8 goals ever again. So I think it's just going to come down to a Ward-Prowse corner to the head of either Suma or Aguerd or Mavropanos if he gets to play. And that will be the decider, basically. But yeah, you have gone for 3-1 for West Ham. So again, I've gone for a pretty low-scoring clean sheet type of game, and you're going for a pretty high-scoring, the favorite team destroys the other team but concedes a goal type of match. So how do you see this match playing out between West Ham and Sheffield United?
Yeah, I think West Ham are in a good moment right now, trying to build. It's confusing because they're trying to. I didn't know what the expectations were before the season, but they're definitely playing decent football and they're up there.
Yeah.
Is it to get a Europa League, Conference League sort of spot again in regards to
Champions League?
I mean, if you win the Europa League, then maybe.
You're a trophy-winning club after all. So yeah.
So if you're trying to, focus on the Europa League as your main sort of objective, which I think you probably should to be.
We have a stronger squad this season because we have more players.
Of course.
We turned one amazing, greatest midfielder player into 3 really good midfielders. So we have more depth this time around.
Of course. I think Ward-Prowse is probably one of my favorite signings of the whole window. Yeah. So the fact that you were able to ruthlessly take away Southampton's best player and captain is just chef's kiss. So he deserves, in the sense that he deserves to be in the Premier League and,
definitely
be on our screens for many, many years. So, yeah, I think James Ward-Prowse has been firing on all cylinders. I think Jared Bowen's, again, looks like the Jared Bowen of old, or rather the Jared Bowen from the latter half of last year, or last season rather. And I think that's the reason why I think West Ham will win. It's a gimme win in that regards. If there's a win that you have at home, it's against Sheffield United. So I have faith in West Ham. David Moyes, obviously, Moisey. Always back him, and I think you guys are going to have a comfortable win. I don't think it's going to be 1-0, 1-1, and then you run away with it. I think you guys are going to run away with it, and then due to complacency, probably concede a goal. And also because Sheffield United have genuinely scored against most clubs, so including present company.
2 against Everton now.
Yeah, so we will have to wait and see what happens in that game, but I think you guys are going to run away with it.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of West Ham assets there, but who do you think is the better asset out of Ward-Prowse and Bowen? If you had to pick one, there's about 1 million difference. I think Bowen is 7.1 and Ward-Prowse is 6.2, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I mean, I really like if Ward-Prowse was on penalties, secured on pens.
Most likely not. It seems like it's going to be Benrahma, Paqueta, and then Ward-Prowse potentially. But we haven't seen West Ham get a penalty with Ward-Prowse on the pitch, so maybe that changes. But he's been about 50% on penalties the past few years, so I think Paqueta is going to be the main man currently. But Benrahma is also a pretty good penalty taker as well. So finally we have some good penalty takers. We went for several seasons with just missing penalty after penalty after penalty. Declan Rice, Mikel Antonio, whoever took it, missed it. Bowen as well had penalties for a while and missed a couple. So yeah.
100%. So for me, I think Bowen is obviously the bigger threat. He plays more advanced and all this type of stuff.
Yeah.
But if JWP was on pens as well, I would have been even more all over JWP because Ward-Prowse is fantastic. He blanked in 1 game or 2 games now.
Just this past game against Liverpool is the only game in every tournament so far where he hasn't had a goal or assist.
Yeah, and makes sense considering you're playing Liverpool at Anfield. So like I can't even hold it against him that
Yeah,
he
Bowen
didn't.
scored though. To be fair
Yeah,
to
yeah.
him.
And that's why I think Bowen's the
Yeah,
one, because on the counter attacks, you're looking at Bowen rather than James Ward-Prowse. James Ward-Prowse slow ass isn't gonna beat anyone on the counter. He'll do the pass to the guy doing the counter and all this type of stuff, but
yeah,
nah, man. So that for that reason, I'll go with Bowen because he is the one who's the more offensive threat. But I think overall play and stuff like that, Jared Bowen's a very close second.
yeah. Fair enough. I think I'm also leaning towards Bowen in terms of being the better pick in general, but I think especially if you're on a wild card for game week 9 or 10, where you can actually bring in Bowen on the wild card, and then you want to go with a West Ham punt before that, I feel like for this game specifically against Sheffield United, who are the weakest team when it comes to defending set pieces, I think Ward-Prowse is a really tempting option personally as well. Like I'm considering bringing him in personally as well. Also because he's so cheap and enables some other players. But yeah, for this game in particular, I think he's going to be a really good asset. But eventually in the future, I think Bowen is more the player to have from West Ham. So yeah. But that's enough of West Ham as well. Let's move on to Wolves against Man City. Don't really have to talk much about this game either, to be honest, because we both expect a huge Man City win. We both expect a clean sheet for Man City as well, which is kind of rare from us. But yeah, I have 4-0 for Man City away against Wolves. You have 3-0 for Man City away against Wolves. Basically, the only question I want to ask you is who can you see scoring the goals for Man City? Is it going to be only Haaland? Is it going to be some surprise players? Any Alvarez? Do you think he's going to be back on track? Foden? Any other interesting players? How do you think Rodri as well will affect him? Rodri being out will affect him offensively as well.
No, I don't, because I really like Nunez, and
Yeah.
I think he can fill into the slot pretty seamlessly. Obviously, not as good as Rodri, because I still think Rodri's world class. But yeah, I still think City are going to look good. It's not very nice, or it's very what's the term I'm looking for? It's not flattering at all that they went out to Ipswich Town after being 2-0 up as well. So yeah, I think this match heavily favors City. City are the champions, they're the treble winners, all this shit. So yeah, sorry Wolves. I think you guys are gonna get spanked by City. I think right now it's really difficult to say who will score. I think I'm gonna say Haaland's gonna get the biggest share because he's been missing a lot of big chances. So this is sort of a game where he reels it back in, where he gets only 22 touches, but 3 of those touches are goals. So
Haaland hat-trick, you heard it here first.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's sort of similar as well. I think Haaland could easily get a brace in this game, and then maybe some goals from Alvarez and Foden. That would be nice personally as well. Doku is also someone you mentioned as well, as someone you're interested in FPL
100%.
as well, and who looks really good every time he plays for Man City. Really a fun player to watch as well. Yeah. Nice to see finally like a player like that being unleashed for Man City as well, because they usually turn their players into more like productive players, but kind of more boring players as well. But yeah, Doku has been a really interesting player to watch. But yeah, let's move to a game that is way more unpredictable and more fun, to be honest, also to watch, and that is going to be Spurs against Liverpool. I gone for 2-2 here. After predicting Arsenal to beat Spurs last time around, I'm going more towards Spurs this time around with a 2-2 draw. You gone with a 2-1 Liverpool win away from home. So you think Liverpool's away form from last season is not here anymore? You think they are going to pull off the win here?
Yeah, man. I mean, they were able to beat Newcastle, who were playing at home and all this type of stuff.
Yeah.
I also just think that Liverpool are having a very quiet season in that regards. I don't see why people don't view them more of a threat than they are in that regards. They're not playing in the Champions League. They can pretty much walk around the Europa League. They will play their starting players and stuff just to make sure that they're in form and etc. Which I think is good. Like someone like Darwin Nunez, who's been lacking in sort of the confidence, has been scoring left and right now, and it's going to be a real headache because Jota's scoring, he's scoring, Salah's scoring, and then you got Luis Diaz, scoring every now and then too, and Szoboszlai, and I still haven't seen the Szoboszlai goal, but I want to. And they're just quietly having a pretty good season. that's why I think Spurs are going to get shell shocked a little and lose this game. Don't get me wrong. I am Ange Ball. I love what I've seen so far. He's made Spurs play really fun,
Yeah.
entertaining football. So it wouldn't surprise me if the draw happens or if Spurs can manage to edge a win at home like they did against Man United. However, I'm sorry to say this, Man United fans, Liverpool aren't Man United.
Yeah.
They're much more functional, got things going. Their attackers are playing and not getting allegations of all this other bullshit. No, I'm just kidding. But in all seriousness, everything's going very fluidly, which fucking sucks as an Evertonian to say because my favorite season was, when they finished below us and just are shit. So, which will not happen for a long time.
They
So yeah,
did. They did win the Champions League that season, though. But yeah.
yeah. So, anyways, it sucks to say this, but yeah, Liverpool have pretty much impressed me this entire season.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's why I think they'll run away with one.
Yeah. Whether they win 2-1 or they draw 2-2, I hope Salah scores both goals and that Madison's on blank. But that's just me. And you, I guess that's what you hope as well. But then we have Nottingham Forest against Brentford. I've gone with a Nottingham Forest win, actually, because I'm sort of like my whole newest thing is that Brentford are not that good anymore because they have gotten so many injuries. They did survive the Ivan Toney thing for a while, but now it sort of feels like they are on the downturn. And I think Nottingham Forest have actually been like slightly frisky so far this season. And they do have some fun players offensively. Still waiting for Gibbs White to like properly be introduced this season as well and show the same form that he had last season. But Avoni has been amazing still. And I think Nottingham Forest are just a really good team. So I've gone with a 2-1 win for Nottingham Forest. You've gone with 1-1 here, which is fair enough as well. Like two pretty evenly matched teams, I guess. But yeah, how do you see this team or this game panning out? And yeah, it's the only game on Sunday as well. So what do you feel about this Super Sunday, as it were, as well?
Anyways, like I think Nottingham Forest winning is the more realistic sort of outcome, but I think Brentford needs I think Brentford need to react to some of their more random losses and draws and all this type of stuff with um, what would be considered like a draw away against Nottingham Forest, who are pretty decent at home, isn't the worst result. I mean, they lost to Liverpool last season, which not a lot of people saw coming, and all this type of stuff. So, like, Forest are legit at home, but I don't know. I feel like both teams, like you said, are evenly matched in many ways, even though they're at different sides of the table. So yeah, that's why I've gone for the draw because I don't think Wissa is eventually going to come good. Ryan and Mbeumo is eventually going to come good. They have a good solid core there, but Nottingham Forest are good at home, and you know their Morgan Gibbs White has sort of underwhelmed as well. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if he exploded in this game and he's the one who's got the brace and that's why they won. So I think he could go either a 2-1 win for Nottingham Forest or a Brentford draw, if that makes sense. I don't think Brentford have what it takes currently to win this game because they've been a bit dysfunctional for the last couple of weeks. So, yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of dysfunctional, the next game is Chelsea's game against Fulham, and we actually think that Chelsea are going to pull off a win here. We both have 2-1 for Chelsea in this match, and personally, I just think Fulham are just that bad that Chelsea should beat them. I think Fulham have been really bad this whole season. Leno is their only saving grace so far. So maybe I should have gone with 1-0 for Chelsea as well because I feel like this is going to be a pretty low scoring game, but yeah, 2-1. Who could you see scoring for Chelsea now that Nick Jackson is not playing and they might actually get some goals?
Our dude Sterling, because of course people are gonna sell Sterling and then he'll score.
Yeah,
That's how this works. That's FPL in a nutshell. So I think it will benefit Sterling to play as a lone striker because he's the only one who's shown any scoring capability, except for Nicholas Jackson, who has scored and scored today, for
Yeah.
example. Um, so yeah, I think Sterling will get the goals. I think I think Mudryk will do something interesting. I think
Mm.
he will be an issue because of his pace against the sort of defenders that Crystal Palace have. Or
Fulham.
Crystal Palace. What am I talking about? Fulham. Sorry.
Kenny Tete, I think, or
Yeah.
Castagne.
So I mean, yeah, Kevin Ababu and all these sort of guys are really super fast and all this type of stuff. So they might do something crazy in terms of playing. But nah, man. I think generally speaking, Marcus Silva is a dog shit manager, and I'm finally glad that he's being found out for the fucking worm that he is. But at the same time, I think Chelsea's complacency will cost them a random ass goal. But Fulham have not impressed me at all. I've seen bits of Luton and been like, ah, you're dog shit, but there's some quality there. Carlton Morris, this guy, that guy.
Yeah.
Fulham, I look at that and I'm like, this is so boring. Why am I even watching this?
Yeah. And I think also, I've said this a couple of times now, I think Carlos Vinicius should play over Raul Jimenez. I don't think Jimenez has what it takes anymore. And Vinicius has just looked more dangerous every time I've
Yeah,
seen him play.
100%.
But yeah, Chelsea win in this game. We have the same result there. And we also have the same result in the double game week fixture, which is between Luton and Burnley. The formerly game week 2 fixture that was postponed. And we've gone for 1-1, which is kind of boring in terms of an FPL perspective because there's no clean sheets and there's not that many goals either. But I think that's sort of why I've gone for this result, 1-1. I think maybe Morris will get his goal in this game. But yeah, I think it's just going to be like a pretty even match where Luton play at home. They'll hopefully get their fans behind them and they'll get a point, which is okay, I guess, for them. But they really should, both of these teams really should look at this game as like a must-win game. This is where we need to stake our claim as like not as bad as the other team and Sheffield United and actually be the best promoted team this season, because for me it's looking decently likely that the 3 promoted teams are going to go straight back down again, and that doesn't usually happen in the Premier League.
Oh, of course not.
So yeah, 1-1. But yeah, let me just ask you about that. Basically, out of the 3 teams, Luton, Burnley, and Sheffield United, which team do you think is the most likely to go down, and which team do you think is the least likely to go down out of those 3?
Fulham.
Huh? Not Fulham. The new promoted teams.
No, my answer is Fulham. I hate Marcus Silva. No, I'll be honest. Yeah, you have to say Luton just simply because they don't have the sort of money to compete with Burnley and with Sheffield. So yeah, like I think they're the most likely to go down, sadly, but they're the ones I've enjoyed the most because they have heart. They're giving it their damn best, like I'm like, oh, like this is gonna be. So last year, because Everton were in the race, I was just like, fuck every other club that isn't Everton. Like I didn't feel bad. Like there was the only one I felt bad about was Leicester, to be honest, because Leicester, especially because they won the Premier League and all this stuff, like it's a shame that they got relegated. Southampton, they kind of always been around flirting with relegation and haven't really done much. Fuck off. And who else went down? Leeds? Yeah,
Yeah.
fuck Leeds. Leeds fans just spoke so much. Like I got so much shit from Leeds fan. Like, oh, you're definitely gonna go down instead of us. Okay, that went well. So it'd be a real shame if Luton go down. I don't mind a little Burnley ball every now and then too. Like I am, Loughton. You, I love you, man. Like I really do. That random 15 points that you got from me, you absolute legend. But yeah, so I think the order I'd say is Luton number 1,
Number 20.
or yeah, number 20. I'd probably say Sheffield United have shown me more signs of life than Burnley, so I might
Really?
like Yeah, because
Even after the 8-0. They seem pretty dead to me.
they can at least score more than once. No, yeah, no, I probably have to give Sheffield at 19 and then Burnley at 18.
Yeah. So you think all
It's
three
a
will go down,
shame.
or do you think
I think
Burnley will stay up
like
rather than Fulham?
nah, like I think Burnley will go down sadly because I think Wolves
Okay.
have enough to sort of get shit going because Wolves were such a prime candidate for relegation as well. So I think they can get things going. I also think that Fulham are just about gonna survive. I don't think Everton are gonna once Jack Harrison's back and all this type of stuff. I think Everton will start flying up the table a little bit, all the way to second in the league. No, just kidding. Obviously, I think we're going to be safe.
Yeah,
I
I think so
I
too.
genuinely think so. Um, but yeah, sadly, I think all three will go down. Vincent Company's probably ruined the fact that he didn't go to Spurs because he might have Ange balled before Ange balled in that regards, because the quality of players were there and all this type of stuff. So yeah, it's a shame because the minute I said because going to Spurs is also career like it puts your career in jeopardy, right? Because Spurs is a poison chalice, and for Ange, I get it. He can't. It sounds like a really mean thing, but like, and it seems like I'm discrediting Celtic as a club, but like Spurs is a step up, right? Whilst Vincent Company is like a serial Premier League winner and all this type of stuff, he might have eventually gotten a as good of a job as Spurs. But unfortunately, he went the route of not I'm going to show that I'm the shit by keeping Burnley up, which I think he's failing spectacularly at doing, and I don't think it's anyone's fault other than the fact that just don't have the squad to compete. They really don't.
Yeah.
Being sick in the championship doesn't always automatically mean you're going to be great when you come back to the prep. We've seen so we've seen Norwich look
Fulham as well.
as good as every of these sort of championship winning sides, and then once they come, they're the batter boys of the whole
Yep.
league. So unfortunately, yeah, I think sadly Burnley are going to go down too.
Yeah. So you would
They're on full
definitely
collapse.
do the manager swap with Sean Dyche going back to Burnley and Company going to Everton.
Yeah, man, I think that could be a real fun trade.
Yeah.
I think that's the sort of style a manager who thinks outside the box is what we need, and we've had too
Mm.
many dinosaurs in that sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it's going to be a long season for those three clubs. That's for sure.
Yeah. Let's move on to the fixture ticker. And yeah, speaking of Everton, they actually have two really enticing, fun fixtures coming up with Luton at home for Everton now, and then Bournemouth at home in Game Week 8. And I kind of want to talk about these types of teams that have pretty good Game Week 7, Game Week 8, and potentially Game Week 9 as well, because Game Week 9 and 10 are like the prime game weeks for a wildcard. So a lot of people will be looking to get some frisky, interesting differentials for these 2 or 3 game weeks coming up. And Everton is one of those teams, with especially the next 2 fixtures. They have Liverpool away in Game Week 9, which is not the best. But the next 2 fixtures, Luton at home and Bournemouth at home, you won't get 2 better fixtures in a row for Everton this season, all season basically. And as an Everton fan, you should probably have some insights into who is the best potential FPL picks. So if you were to go with an Everton player for the next 2 game weeks to get as many points as possible, who would you look into getting?
3 players that I can just say straight away. A little bit outside picks and some of the more obvious ones. Number one, I think Calvert Lewin. He is
Mm-hmm.
in fine form. He's our pen taker when he's on the pitch as well. Easy 6 million striker to have. Number two, Ducouré. I think he's sort of had an understated season. He's always like if you watch all the Everton highlights and of the Everton misses and stuff, it's always Decore who accidentally randomly hits the post or the bar. Even against Brentford, where he scored, he actually hit the bar afterwards, like just literally a couple minutes later. So, or a couple minutes before. So the chance creation's there. He's getting to play a bit more offensively after he spoke out and said, "I want to play a little bit more like a cam rather than CDM."
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough to you. Like he's getting in the right positions and stuff like that. And obviously, the third one is Tarkowski because I think
Yeah.
Tarkowski is perfect dice ball. Lump it to his fucking big ass forehead. He will score. And yeah, he got a goal and assist in the game against Brentford and stuff like that. He's always an offensive threat. Now that McNeil's back, who is his like favorite assist, like his favorite assist player is towards Tarkowski. So I think Tarkowski is someone to lean on, especially because I think we're going to lose clean sheets, but Tarkowski offers something that our fullbacks currently don't, which is the goal and assist, which you would expect from the fullbacks. But it's not our fullbacks that does that. It's our center backs that tend to get the sort of offensive goals and assists and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So those would be my three players. I definitely think Jack Harrison, once he's fully fit, is going to be disgusting. He's always a double digit, sort of player in the sense that he'll accumulative goals and assists get like 10 or 13, sort of thing. And in some cases, actually gets 10 goals in the actual Premier League season. So, yeah, I think Jack Harrison's also someone to keep an eye out for, especially considering the fact that his price must be ridiculously low. Then Juma, I'm a little bit concerned about, and I warn players currently. I think he's been struggling a little bit with fitness and stuff, so just keep an eye out for him. Obviously, I love Beto as well. It just depends if Daesh has the balls to play a two striker system. Because now I think that Calvert-Lewin is back in form. Calvert-Lewin will be the preferred player out of the two. But Beto is so hardworking and very impressive player. It wouldn't surprise me if he can bag a few goals down the stretch. But Calvert-Lewin, Doucouré, and Tarkowski. I'd probably say in the order of Calvert-Lewin, Tarkowski, Doucouré, and in FPL order. But in terms of importance for the team, I'd say it's Calvert-Lewin, Doucouré, and Tarkowski.
Yeah. I always like a cheeky Doucouré pick. Like he's been pretty profitable for me in FPL in the past as well. So I'm kind of tempted by that personally. But I'm not looking to wildcard in Game Week 9 or 10. I'm looking to save it for that Game Week 19 double Game Week 20 Man City Brentford sort of thing. So yeah, sadly I'm going to look away from Everton. I'm most likely going to look away from West Ham as well, but I am very tempted about this next game against Sheffield United. Also after that, Aston Villa, Everton, Brentford, decent matches from Game Week 9 onwards as well. Newcastle at home and Game Week 8 not so much, but yeah, there are some teams that are getting some nice fixture swings now in general, but yeah, keeping on with the theme of Game Week 7, Game Week 8 and potentially Game Week 9, any other teams or players that stand out to you as well from any of the other teams?
100% Diaby.
Yeah.
Matty Cash. Some of the Aston Villa boys for sure. Obviously, I'm riding or dying with Bruno Fernandes, so United players look good. Newcastle stock hasn't been the highest it's been all season because they look terrible, and then all of a sudden, which I guess was bound to happen. Other than that, pretty underwhelming sort of players, teams, and all this type of stuff. Like, if something happens to Saka, sell, because Arsenal do not have the most fun games. Yeah, I do like the shout of James Ward-Prowse that we spoke about earlier.
Yeah.
I like Brentford's matches, but I just don't like Brentford at the moment. That's the only issue. Otherwise, I'd be all over Wissa and Buemo and all this type of stuff. But Rico Henry being out for the rest of the season is also a huge blow. And Tony's potentially not ever going to be a Brentford player again if all these, like Chelsea, who need a striker, might end up trying to sign him.
Ivan Toney, you mean? Or
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That Chelsea.
I thought you said Rico Henry.
No, I first said Rico
Okay.
Henry's out for the rest of the
Okay,
season,
fair
and
enough.
then spoke about how Ivan
Tony.
Toney
Okay,
might
fair enough.
not play for Brentford ever again
Yeah.
if Chelsea end up signing him in the January transfer window. Um, I'll be honest, Burnley and Luton double up, I couldn't care less.
Yeah.
I'm not even remotely interested in that. But if you have them, great. Good luck. Hope you get all the points.
Isaac Kabore. Ooh.
I looked out to get the assist. It's classic FPL when he actually deserved an assist for his crazy good cross. He didn't get it, but then the cheapest bullshit sort of
Penalty, yeah. Handball.
penalty, handball. Everyone has a different interpretation to it. My interpretation of that is if it hits your body and then flings up to your arm, it hit your body first, right?
Yeah. He made a good
But
block
yeah,
and got punished for it.
so exactly. He did the honest play and got punished for it. So
But apparently that is the rule because I had this it happened in the Norwegian league and that was even worse because it hit a guy like stretched for it and then it hit the guy's knee and then it hit his teammate in the chest next to him and then back onto his arm again. So hit his knee, his teammate's chest, and then his arm, and that was deemed the penalty. He even got a second yellow card for handballing. I don't know why, and got a red card from that as well in a game. And I was sort of like, I didn't understand it at all how it was handball in the first place, and especially red card. There's this Norwegian ref or former Norwegian ref, disgraced Norwegian ref, I guess, on Twitter, who's really vocal about all different types of like situations and stuff. And he was just like, "Oh, it's a clear pen. It's not a red, but it's a clear pen." And I tried to discuss with him, but he's also notoriously known as like someone who doesn't really care about discussing things. He's just like, "Oh, referring back to the rule number, blah 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 blah." But yeah, I don't understand it either. But that's a tangent that we don't really have to go into in an already long podcast. But yeah, no interest in Luton or Burnley players, and I think I sort of have to agree with you there as well. Like, yeah, I have Kabore. I'm going to start Kabore, but other than him, potentially getting a clean sheet against either Everton or Burnley, most likely Burnley, to be honest. Yeah, other than that, not really that interested. Carlton Morris, I think if you have Nick Jackson still and you're looking for another striker, maybe not the worst to have him this game week, especially considering the money. Still think Alvarez against Wolves away could easily outscore Morris in those two games as well, especially considering he might, or he's most likely to start Alvarez as well. But yeah, I don't mind the punt if you have Nick Jackson, for example. But other than that, I would kind of stay away from Luton and Burnley personally as well. But yeah, you mentioned some nice teams there as well. Diaby is definitely someone I'm looking into. He's even though he has a tough fixture against Brighton, that is also a team that can concede some goals, especially on the counter. So you can easily see Diaby scoring in that game. He's definitely someone I'm considering myself. Many United players, I'm just hoping and praying that they don't score any points like I have been most of the season. It has worked out pretty well so far, but I know eventually with the new players coming in, Amrabat, Højlund being more into the side again now as well, it might come where Man United start scoring 2 or 3 goals or even 4 goals each game as well. So yeah, also a fun team to look at. And then we have Newcastle as well, where Gordon is someone that I don't want to talk about as well. We can actually talk about that when it comes to the weekly wildcard draft as well. But yeah, Anthony Gordon, you know him from Everton as well. Always been sort of like a up and down sort of player. When he looks good, he looks really good. When he looks bad, he looks really bad. But this season, he has looked really good. So he's like, what is it, 5.6, I think he costs now in FPL. Playing pretty much every single game now for Newcastle. He has so far, even though Harvey Barnes has been right there to take his spot. But now Harvey Barnes is out for a couple of months, it seems like, as well. So Gordon in general, not just for the next few game weeks, but just beyond that as well, for Newcastle's pretty good run of fixtures going forward. Do you have any interest of him, or is it too much bad blood because as an Everton fan, or do you not believe in him because you've seen him fail so many times for Everton? Like, what are your feelings about Anthony Gordon in general?
I think there's I mentioned it in the podcast in the past that there's such strong belief in him from Newcastle fans, Newcastle uh board, the training staff, everything like that. They are in real belief that he is so good that, selling St. Max for profit, is worth it, sort of thing, even though I think St. Max is the way more dynamic and all this type of stuff, and was a pretty stupid the sale in that regards. But Anthony Gordon has shown immense improvement, a lot of maturity, despite the fact that he has gajillion yellow cards.
Yeah, 4 yellow, 1 away from suspension. Would that put you
But
off, by the way? The 4
it
yellow
does.
cards?
Yeah, of course it does. Like even Nicholas Jackson just getting yellow cards for
Yeah.
fun is the main reason why I never brought him in. So for me, I think it's definitely worth the punt. I think he's gonna be a dynamic player for them, especially if there's this rotating striker situation keeps being a thing for
Yeah.
Newcastle. You need consistency in FPL, and if Anthony Gordon plays every game, and especially with Harvey Barnes out, he's going to be a valuable asset and someone who can easily get points. And I think he's often very underrated for his pass creation. Some of the assists that he can and some of the key chances that he creates, they're in like Barcelona-esque and the wow, like I didn't even see that being the way that you could pass it, and he does it like with the outside of his boot, or sort of does like a quick sort of no look pass and all this type of stuff. Like it's been fun to see Anthony Gordon actually living up to his price tag, because when he first came to Newcastle, no chance was he a 40 million player, but now hell yeah, he's slowly getting himself into maybe even exceeding that price tag, because it's looking good. I've been very impressed with him.
Yeah.
So yeah, for sure, he's definitely someone that I'm considering. If it's someone, if that's how I get Trippier in, yeah, sure, I don't mind stashing Gordon. And if there's news that he's going to be benched, then I don't feel that hard done by because he's 5.5
Yeah.
or even
5.6,
less.
I guess now. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also have one other question when it comes to Gordon, because he has played in a couple different positions in general, both for Everton and for Newcastle. But if now both Wilson and Isak are both out at the same time, do you think there's a slight chance he might play up front, or do you think he's like never that guy? Who do you think would play up front for Newcastle if those two guys are out, by the way?
It should be the striker they originally bought, which is Joel.
Yeah.
Yeah,
False
I
nine.
mean, yes. I mean, yeah, because that's what he was at Hoffenheim.
Yeah.
So I'm a bit confused. I would say they could play Chris Wood, but that was obviously a scam to get Burnley relegated instead of them. So
Yeah, hasn't he left again, or where does he play now?
he's at Nottingham Forest.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I don't maybe as a false nine, but no way. Like I think what will they settle for instead for these like wow, they have really limited options. I think it genuinely be like a Joelinton or do they have any upcoming strikers in the bench that I can, for whatever reason,
The only
blanking
listed
on?
forwards in FPL are Isak and Wilson, basically. Then they have Joelinton. Don't think Anderson can play there. Yeah, it's pretty much just Joelinton, and yeah, Gordon, hasn't he played up front for Everton? Like sort of as like a two
He once
sort
he
of
once
thing.
played sort of like a false nine
Second striker
behind the
behind.
second striker
Yeah.
sort of thing, and I've also seen obviously Almiron do that. So it all depends on Eddie Howe and Tyndall's sort of creativity with that, but I would imagine maybe Joelinton getting a chance again.
Yeah, but that's
Maybe
also
they should
final.
get
Yeah, just go on. What's your final?
maybe they should get Rondon back, but yeah, that's just a joke.
Yeah, also just as a final question when it comes to Newcastle, we talked about how it's uncertain if one or both or either striker is out with injury, but if one of them is out with injury and the other is fit to play, especially like for the next like 3 or 4 game weeks, would you look into buying them? Is it dependent on who it is, or like
100%.
yeah? Would you potentially
100%.
sell
Because if
Alvarez to
it's
get it, or would you play like fourth or with 3 strikers if that's the case?
yeah, if that's the case, then I'd send Sterling to the Shadow Realm or potentially Brian and Buemo and just get like some cheap uh
Yeah,
midfielder that like a 4.5 that plays and
Papasar,
then
for example.
yeah, and yeah, if it's Isak, great. Sweden, love it. Cash it in, penalty taker, all that shit. If it's Wilson, great penalty taker. so so yeah, depending on either striker, I'll take them. Of course,
Yeah.
they're obviously going to be the focal point of attack and stuff. And it's disgusting that both Wilson and Isak scored in that 8-0.
Oh, my ring light died.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I think that's also, I will get my right light on back pretty soon. But yeah, I think that's also really interesting and something that could change really, because I've seen people make the argument that Game Week 7 wildcard will be pretty similar to their Game Week 9 or 10 wildcard. But that's the sort of thing that could happen that really changes everything around. Like if, for example, one of the Newcastle strikers gets injured and then they have Crystal Palace at home, Wolves away. Arsenal is not the easiest match, but after that they have some easy matches as well. If they have like really good fixtures coming up, and Alvarez is still firing on all cylinders, and Haaland is still firing on all cylinders, then you would probably want to go with 3 strikers or 3 forwards instead. So that could change a lot from your wildcard now in Game Week 7 to your wildcard in Game Week 9 or Game Week 10. So I think in general, most people will be better served waiting for Game Week 9 or Game Week 10 to do the wildcard rather than doing it now. But that's just me personally. But as I go to fix my ring light, it's just right down there. Is there anything else from this fixture ticker that catches your eye, and whether it's good or bad? Man City is at the bottom of this. Do you have any like worries about either Haaland or Alvarez at this point, or Foden if you have Foden, or Doku or anything, or do you think Man City are just fixture proof and it's going to be fine regardless?
Man City are fixture proof in my opinion. I think one of the main things about them is the fact that they can score against anyone, they can beat anyone. It's all a game to them. It's theirs to lose, which is pretty messed up to say about a league, that they're so good that it's in their hands to fuck it up in that regard. So I think City are fine. Sure, of course, in terms of like if you have a City defender, it's going to look a little bit iffy for you because they're playing the difficult games. But in terms of having like a double up on Alvarez and Haaland, or potentially just Haaland and Foden, or Alvarez and Foden if you're some crazy guy. Yeah, that perfectly works. The one thing that I'd like to say about the bottom 3 teams, and I'm glad to see Fulham being there, is the fact that I did warn people about Brighton. So if you do have a bunch of Brighton assets and now start to see their, sort of hot start dwindle, maybe it's time to consider the Aston Villas and Newcastle of the world than sticking with the Brighton assets. So if you have Matoma, Estupinian, and Ferguson, or you have, Pedro. Listen, I can't say anything about Ansu Fati until I see him regularly play, but that boy is fixture proof. He scores against Real Madrid. He enjoys it.
Fair enough. We all love Ansu Fati here on this podcast, and yeah, he is actually someone that would be really fun if he starts showing some signs. Because from Game Week 10 onwards, they have pretty decent fixtures, Brighton. If Fati could show some signs, and he has been playing up front a bit as well, that would be a really fun punt to go with as well at that point in time. But yeah, a lot of interesting things you can look at in the future game weeks, especially with the game weeks or the fixtures turning for a lot of teams in around game week 8, 9, 10-ish range. So yeah, I think there's a lot of fun stuff you can do in terms of FPL. And speaking of the future in FPL, I do the weekly wildcard draft every single week, and this week it is pretty similar to what I had last week. There's just 4 differences. I brought in Turner in goal because, yeah, I just want to spend the least amount possible on goalkeepers, and I feel like Turner and Areola still, seeing as Turner is still keeping his place, they still have pretty good rotation, and then Areola from game 10 onwards is just going to be like the auto pick in terms of goalkeepers. Medicash has come in defense rather than Gusto. Gusto got sent off last time, so that was a pretty easy swap away. And like we just mentioned, Aston Villa have really good fixtures, so that's why I have Cash, and I think his attacking threat is going to be really good. Moreno is still out with injury. He didn't even feature at all in the Carabao Cup now. So I think Cash is pretty secure in his place as well. Now, the other 2 players that I brought in are Heung-min Son, which I stupidly removed last game week, and now he punished me with the goals. And then James Ward-Prowse, like the little punt. I wanted to go with James Ward-Prowse. But yeah, looking at this team in general, I usually ask you these questions each week as well. Out of all these players, are there anyone you would remove, and are there anyone not in this team that you would add to this team?
Obviously, Trippier is one of the sort of crazier ones. If you're gonna have anyone, maybe you
Yeah.
should have him. But other than that, I think this is a yeah, it's a pretty decent side. Maybe um no, I think this is a perfectly decent side. It's just maybe uh add a little bit more Newcastle assets. Obviously, I'm gonna make a mention of Man United, even though they're super inconsistent. I think obviously the fixtures dictate that you need to have at least one of the players. I'm not saying it has to be Rashford, but potentially a Bruno, maybe a Högland sort of cheeky outsider pick. Even Martial, if he keeps starting every game and all this shit, because he is scoring now and he's sort of seems like he's back into it. So yeah, I'm obviously kidding about the Martial thing. But Rasmus Højlund, I think, is one of those fun sort of cheeky punts, and I think United, to be fair, do deserve to have a player, maybe even one of their defenders, because they've
Yeah.
had some injuries with the fullbacks, so you could get a cheap fullback in. So that is an example of a player to have. But other than that, Odogie's solid, despite the next game being against Liverpool. Everything going forward looks great. Botman, great, unless the knee injury thing that
Yeah.
was spoken about is legit, which seems to sort of fuel the earlier rumor stuff about his knee injury maybe being a thing. So maybe he did play through injury and it just got worse.
Yeah.
Other than that, pretty happy with the team. Obviously, I hate our goalkeepers, but goalkeepers suck generally speaking. But other than that, yeah, can't complain.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm pretty happy with the team as well. But just one, speaking of the Newcastle attackers, we've talked a bunch now about Anthony Gordon as well. That's probably the one change I'd probably like to make looking at this again. That would be changing Ward-Prowse to Gordon. That's potentially a better pick because he's both cheaper and plays for, I have to admit, a better team currently and with better fixtures in the next 4 as well. But I just like the punt on Ward-Prowse this game week against Sheffield United. That's basically why I've added him this week as like the 15th sort of wildcard pick. And also led to like a decent thumbnail with him doing the goal swing thing and all that stuff. But yeah, that's pretty much the weekly wildcard draft team. If you want to get the thoughts about every single player on this team, you can check out that video that I filmed and put out on Wednesday. So yeah, check that out if you haven't already. But let's move on to our upcoming plans. And now Kevin's ring light is also dying as well, so it's signs of a long podcast happening. But yeah, let's move on to Kevin's current plans as well, while Kevin tries to sort out his lighting, I guess. So these are Kevin's players for this upcoming game week. You can see Saka there with the yellow flag on his basically graphic, because he is a slight doubt for the game against Bournemouth. And if he is out, Kevin might look to bring in Son, but you don't have the money for Son currently, but you would get that money from selling Chilwell to Botman, and that makes a lot of sense for me. Or Chilwell to Fabian Schär, I guess, if Botman is injured. You could also do that. Fabian Schär actually did feature now against Man City. So he should be a pretty safe option. And even though he didn't score points last game week, I don't think there's any threat to choosing Schär over Botman or Burn. I think it's just kind of random that Schär was the only one who didn't end up scoring any points. I still think he's a perfectly viable pick going forward as well. And there's not that much of a price difference between Botman or Schär going forward anyway. But yeah, in general, just talk us through your team and your transfers and how certain are you about doing these transfers, especially the Saka to Son move? Is it entirely dependent on the Saka injury news, or is it?
Yeah, it's very much dependent on the news and whether it's like a several weeks sort of thing, because several weeks is perfect anyways, because their matches suck. So it'd be like a happy coincidence to bring him back when he's fit for when the fixtures turn. So but if he's not injured and he's definitely starting, then I think I'm gonna just potentially just maybe just a Chilwell move for someone. if I hear anything about Brentford or Mbeumo's on the chopping block as it is.
Yeah.
Bruno's also on the chopping block, but because of their easy fixtures, and I showed a little bit of patience for being me by keeping him against Burnley and it paying off. More than happy to give him another week, especially
Yeah.
considering the fact that they're going into the game having already beaten them and stuff like that. Could lead to complacency, to be fair. But nah, I think Bruno is further away from the chopping block than Sterling and Mbeumo. I wouldn't say Saka's on the chopping block. It's just the injury that dictates that. Chilwell is number fucking one. He
Yeah.
needs to get the fuck out of my team. He almost scored 50 points in that first game against Liverpool. That shocked me and was like, oh shit. Chilwell Neymar connection left wing. It's looking sick, but he's been dog shit ever since. And partially due to his own injuries, partially due to game management, I guess, from Hutch side, and then obviously trying to game manage him against Brighton and fucking it up by getting him injured. So what can you do? So some players are just FPL trolls. He's my Cancelo, I guess. So yeah, I got to get rid of him. He's out the team. Reece James in as a potential swap? Fuck no, because he's always injured too. So yeah, I need to go with the best team and best fixtures. So would I be willing to go for a United player? Maybe, but is it more likely that I'm going to go for a Newcastle one? Yeah, most definitely. So I think it'll be a toss up between Shar and Trippier. It's all depends. It's all a little bit dependent on some of these other players because Gordon is he's looking a bit tasty over there. So I might look into maybe potentially getting in if there's a way that I can get Trippier and Gordon in, which I think is very possible. Uh, that could be the two double swap that I do because I think Gordon shot up into importance. Like even in the game against in the 8-0 win, he started on the bench and was
Yeah.
planning on getting rested and all this type of stuff, but then still came on because of
Barnes
obviously
got injured.
Barnes and looked sick. He was really, really good in that game. So, yeah, that is also a consideration. I'm hoping Saka isn't injured because he's one of my favorite players to watch right now in the Prem, and also just an awesome FPL asset.
Yeah,
So,
he's always
yeah,
been really good to you in FPL as well.
yeah.
Yeah. The one thing that I want to ask you though, because you have Botman as the potential transfer here, you did say Shar because Botman might be injured, but does the Botman, if Botman is injured now for like the foreseeable future, like the next few weeks, 4 weeks or beyond, does that sort of put a bit of a dampen, like, does that dampen your expectations for Newcastle defense already? Because you have Burn already, so would you be happy with a double up, seeing as Botman would be out of the team? Would you still be interested in Newcastle, or would you potentially look at bringing in a different defender from either Aston Villa, who don't have the best fixture this game week, or Spurs, who actually next game week also have a decent fixture or decent fixtures coming up, or potentially going with Issa Kabore as like a stopgap for this game week? Like, are there any other defenders you're considering, or is it basically only Newcastle you want to go with?
I mean, I mentioned Manchester United,
Yeah,
so looking at one of their fullbacks because they're so cheap,
yeah,
and of course, like are in like if it's Dallo that's playing, for example, he's so offensive that it's fun to have.
yeah,
Obviously, Luke Shaw's out for a while. I'm not 100% sure what's going on with Wan-Bissaka either, but they have some fun fixtures. They have, especially Dallo, who shoots and likes to get assists and stuff.
yeah,
I think he could be a fun little differential. But Aston Villa, Matty Cash, even though I clowned on him earlier, I still think their fixtures are good enough for me to be like, well, this is where he can get a decent. I mean, obviously, I thought Chelsea away would have been a hard game, and there he got 6 points, no fuss, and so there are some teams that I'm considering outside of. I just think Trippier, it's a bit of a knee jerk reaction because it was 8-0 and he got such easy assists in that regards. But it's more a momentum thing with Trippier as well. Like he's one of those streaky sort of players. When it's going good, it goes really good. So it wouldn't surprise me if the confidence is back a little after that game as well, because I think that was something that we always commented on, that when things were looking shit, he was the root cause of most reasons why they conceded. Similar to Trent Alexander-Arnold, like he's usually at fault when things are shit, but when things are great, he's scoring free kicks from 30 yards out. He's getting assists from right back, from center back, from goal. He can just, it's all these sort of things. And I think FPL is one of those things where momentum and stuff is part of the game, right? That's why we brought Sterling in. That's why we brought Chilwell in. And of course, on the flip side of the coin, all that can go to hell, and they can go to hell very quickly. But the fixtures dictate that, and I think Newcastle have some really good ones coming up.
Yeah. I think there's only one thing with Trippier, though, and that's the fact that you have Haaland, you have Salah already. If you get Trippier as well, I don't really see any way you can get Son for the matches against Luton and Fulham. And especially against Luton when Haaland plays against Arsenal away, I think, or is it at home? But yeah, he plays Arsenal. That's a game week where a lot of people will go with Son as captain. And if you get Trippier as well, I think it's going to be difficult to get Son into your team.
Yeah.
So I think you sort of have to sacrifice one of those 4 players if that's the case. So I think that's just something you should keep in mind. Just like, do I have the money to get Son? Do I need to get Trippier? Maybe you should. Personally, I think Trippier is more, as we'll get to. We can talk about the upcoming teams actually when we talk about Trippier, because Keemel's projected transfer is Chilwell to Trippier, which makes all the sense in the world, I think, for him. He has a wildcard left as well. You've already used your wildcard, but he has a wildcard, so he can wildcard out Trippier to get Salah in, potentially, if he wants to have Son, Haaland, Salah, and Trippier, the holy foursome, I guess. So yeah, I think Trippier makes more sense as like a short-term option, but for those of us who either are saving the wildcard for later or have already used it, I feel like Trippier is more like a luxury we can't really afford at the moment. So that's just my personal thoughts about Trippier myself. But when it comes to Keemel's team, I fully back buying Trippier. But if he buys Trippier for Chilwell, you can see Chilwell is on the bench and Trippier would not be on the bench. He would start rather than one of these defenders. So out of Bayer, who has a double game week, Saliba has like a good clean sheet opportunity, but not the most attacking returns potential. And then Estepinian, who doesn't have the best clean sheet probability, but has a lot of attacking returns probabilities. Which one of the 3 defenders would you bench out of these 3 if Keemel brings in Trippier for Chilwell?
It's one of the first 2. So I think Estepinian, you play regardless. Saliba can easily keep a clean sheet, but he won't do much more than that. I've said what I've said about Burnley and Luton. Like, I couldn't care less. Like, I'd say bench either. I'd even say bench Bayer. Like, I don't like Burnley at all. So, and I can see them conceding in both games, and Bayer instantly becomes completely irrelevant without clean sheets, even more so than Saliba, because Saliba's at least an offensive threat when it comes to set pieces and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What the fuck is Bayer meant to do? So, I'm sorry, like, I don't mean that as a slight on him or anything like that. It's just more that Burnley are in such a bad position right now. If they even get a single clean sheet in one of those games, I'd be impressed.
Yeah.
They're both away from home as well.
They're both away from home. So I tend to agree with you. I think Bayer is the one that should make way for Trippier if Trippier comes into this team. And I think he probably should. Like I said, I think Keemel has the money to bring in Trippier for Chilwell. I think that transfer makes a lot of sense in terms of now and the next few game weeks. And then, like I said, Bayer, I think, especially now seeing Newcastle score 8 goals against Sheffield United, we know Bayer could potentially end up with a minus point against Newcastle as well. And then he plays Luton, potentially. But Bayer has also struggled with injuries so far this season. So you could, worst case scenario, get like a 6-0 loss against Newcastle, minus points, and then Bayer gets like a slight injury knock or something and doesn't play the second game. So I don't think there's much upside with Bayer. He can score a goal. He scored a goal in preseason, I think, but he's not like Issa Kabore, who can get several assists and stuff. So yeah, I think I would bench Bayer as well out of these 3 defenders. And yeah, like I said, definitely keep Estepinian. And Arsenal, for what it's worth, defensively, in terms of away games, they've actually kept a lot of clean sheets away from home. Last season, I think they kept at least a lot more clean sheets away from home than at home, and that's been the case this season as well. So So I think Saliba and Estupinian are the ones to play, and then Chilwell is the one to sell, especially if he's injured, and then Bayer is the one to bench out of these players. Other than that, I think Kimo has a really good team. Pretty envious of most of his players. I don't really agree with you when it comes to Mitoma, especially in this game, at least against Villa. I think Mitoma can score several goals, so I would not sell him for this game week. But potentially, in game week 9 with Liverpool and Man City, sure, I could see more of a reason to sell him. But for now, should keep him. Same with Rashford. See a lot of reasons to potentially sell him, but Crystal Palace at home, you can't really sell players in those types of matches. I've learned that the hard way this season myself as well. I sold SA, who has been terrible this whole season, or not terrible. He hasn't been terrible, but in terms of FPL, he's been terrible because he hasn't gotten any points, even though he has really good numbers. But the one game he did play well was when they played at home against Wolverhampton, and that's when I sold him as well. For a hit to get Sterling, he has done nothing since in terms of FPL. So yeah, I think you should just keep players in good fixtures when they play for good teams, especially. So yeah, I kind of just agree with Kimo here with Chilwell to Trippier, and yeah, bench Bayer for Trippier, and I think Kimo's going to be good to go. That's also
2.1 million. Holy shit!
Yeah, okay. I know. He's going to be too good to go for this game week. But yeah, let's move on to his potential countryman, the manager of the week, whose name I don't know. But yeah, I have gone with the sort of controversial picker. I said with Walker, it's a fun pick and stuff. He's probably gotten his point returns from Walker this so far this season. But as we saw in the fixture ticker, they are at the bottom. You even brought up the point that Man City defenders might not be the ones to go for. And I think for this game as well, Trippier at home to Burnley is better than Wolves away for Man City, even though we both have a clean sheet for Man City. So I think maybe you should try to be proactive and do Walker to Trippier. But at the same time, you could also save the transfer. Just maybe look and see if Trippier is that essential at all, and you can have 2 transfers for next game week and have 1.8 in the bank and have a lot of room to spare. Potentially to get 2 transfers, you could potentially get Salah next game week as well, because with that money in the bank, you could, with 1.8 in the bank, you could downgrade Rashford or Saka and then upgrade the other one to Salah as well. That's also another avenue to get Salah. So I think those are like my preferred options for this team. But yeah, what do you think about the Walker to Trippier move or the other thing that I mentioned before we end this podcast?
I don't hate this transfer at all, I think, which is a shame considering the fact that Walker has a pretty easy game. So you could just stand pat and then wait it out. It's just the fact that Trippier could haul in the game. So it's just a question of, do you potentially swap out someone else? But no, man, I think Cash is good for the future. Botman's obviously good for the future. Is there a world where you can do Botman straight to Trippier? If Botman's
injured, that's actually a possibility. Yes, Botman is 4.6 and Trippier is 6.5, so I think it would be just not enough.
Under.
Yeah, I think it'd be just like slightly too far away to do that move. But yeah, so yeah, that would be another fun move. Yeah, it really depends on the Botman injury as well. So yeah.
Because if the Botman thing is long term, then I think that's the more pressing thing to sort out. So just keep an eye out on that. But I don't hate the Walker to Trippier move. It's just a shame. But again, Pedro Neto's Pedro Neto. So I could see some magic happening against Kyle Walker and not making him and all this shit. So we'll have to wait and see. But standing pat isn't the worst thing.
Yeah.
It's always good, especially when you have 1.8 and you have a sexy ass team for this game week as it is. Of course, the Son Madison thing could hurt you because I think this is the sort of match where it will, because Liverpool. Of course, it's not Anfield. Then I would have definitely said, okay, you're gonna not get that many points. But yeah, man, anything can happen. I'd say standing pat works very well too, because if Botman's injured and you didn't make a transfer, you could always give Cash a go, because if Aston Villa somehow go crazy, it wouldn't surprise me if Cash is somehow involved with an assist or something like that. So
yeah, I actually agree. After talking it through and you as well backing that up, I think standing pat is probably the move I'd go with. But I do like the Trippier move. If you want to get Trippier, now's the time really, or last game it was really the time, but especially now, if you want Trippier, you should probably go with him. But standing pat and then potentially getting Salah next game is probably better for the long term. So I think that's probably
For
what I
sure.
would lean towards doing if I was this manager. But yeah, if any of you guys watching want to be the manager of the week, you can join our mini league. It's still open for anyone to join. And the league code is V9JT0D, and that is the league code for the FPL Scope mini league. And that is pretty much the podcast. We've gone for almost 2 hours now. It's almost 2 a.m. You can maybe notice that on the sound of our voices, especially Kevin, who I know when he gets tired, he gets really tired. So yeah, with that, we're ending the podcast. And as always, I give Kevin the last word. So what do you have to say to end this podcast that almost lasted 2 hours, Kevin?
Yeah, fuck Marcus Silva. It's a fun thing to say. Hopeful won't go down. Bye bye.
So yeah.